To make these autumnal lights, I need some string lights. There's 25 on here, and they're a kind of warm white. I've got the ones that look a bit like a plastic tube rather than the ones that are on the copper strings, copper line. So I'm also going to use some foam clay. This is ifergoo foam clay from Amazon. Nice and squishy and soft. I'm also going to use a screwdriver, a Phillips head screwdriver that's got a cross. I'll use that for marking. And I've pulled the end off of a micro brush. I'll use that as well. So I'm going to take a piece of the clay and squeeze it a little bit and roll it round just to condition it. And then I basically just want to make a nice smooth round ball. So I'll just roll that around in my hands. And once it's nice and smooth, I can push that onto the light. So I'm just pushing it slightly from the bottom, and it kind of creates an apple shape. So I'm just moulding it around, and it does stick quite well to any kind of plastic. I'm going to use some of these pigment powders. I think they're for nails, but they're neon ones. I'm using the red and an eyeshadow brush, and I'm just going to paint the powder on. It sticks really well to the foam clay, but I found it quite difficult to blend it. And because the foam was pretty soft, I kept making dents in it and it kept misshaping. So although I did get quite a nice effect using the powder, I didn't find it was the best way to colour them. And I will find different ways to colour it later on, and you'll see that in the video. So I just carried on painting this, and as you can see, I'm sort of putting dents, and it is becoming misshapen. I have to keep reshaping it. I used this pale green, and it really was too pale. So you'll see in a moment that I do actually change to a different colour green. But as I say, this didn't last long. I did not like this method of painting them. It's a much better green. And then I'm going to place this back onto the light, and you're going to need to leave them on here because they really do shrink, and you want to make sure that it stays the right size. So I've already done here an acorn, and I'm going to show you how I did that now. I need another piece of clay. And again, I need to roll it around in my hands. This helps to soften it. So I'm just creating a smooth ball, and then more of an oval shape. I want more of an oval shape this time. Once it's smooth, again I need to push that onto the light. Just shape it round a little bit. Then I'm going to use the micro brush stick, and I'm using it to create a line. That will be the little cap that it sits in. I'm just shaping the top, trying to get a little bit of definition. I'm using my thumb. So I've just taken it off the light just to help me shape it a little better. Then I'm going to take the stick and use that to poke some holes and create some texture onto the cap. Now I'll use the screwdriver to put some crosses in the end of the acorn and the apples. And once I'm happy with it, I'm going to place it back onto the light and leave them on there to dry. I also made some pumpkins. Started with a ball again, made sure it was nice and smooth, and then I took the stick and I used it to mark some lines all the way around the ball. and then I squashed the top and the bottom, and I used the stick to make the lines a little bit deeper. Then I pushed the light into the pumpkin just to get the right size and shape, and I will put the pumpkins back on the lights to dry because the foam clay does shrink. If you let them dry off the lights, they won't fit back on again. So far I have pumpkins, apples and acorns, and the last shape I decided to make was some mushrooms or toadstools. So I started with a rough egg shape, and then I used a spatula to partially cut through the top. And then I used my fingers to shape a sausage underneath, which will be the stalk, and my finger and my thumb to pinch a cap on the top. And I kind of twisted and pinched until I got a rough mushroom shape. Mushrooms come in all shapes and sizes, and so you can be a little bit forgiving with it. In order to dry them, I hung them in the window and took full advantage of the sun that we were having. It did take several days for them to dry. Some of them were a little bit thick, and I wanted to make sure that they were completely dry before I started painting them. I used some acrylic paints to paint the acorn. I mixed some yellow ochre and some burnt umber and used that to paint the cap. And then I used some metallic gold paint to paint the acorn itself. The paint stuck well to the foam, and I was very happy with the way it covered, so I decided to do all of the acorns exactly the same. So next I used some red acrylic paint to paint a toadstool cap. I was going to leave the bottom white or try and find some kind of fawn colour. And while I had the red out, I decided to do the apples, and that's where it really didn't work. I really did not like the look of the acrylic paint. It was very streaky and you really couldn't get a blend, especially when I tried to add a green. So I really needed to try and find another way, and now that I'd already painted some, was there anything I could do to rescue them? I decided to try some distress ink. I had one in festive berries and crushed olive, and I used a blending brush to see if I could use that on the foam ball. It worked like a dream. It covered beautifully and was so easy to blend. The green and the red worked perfectly together and it looked seamless. So I decided to use spiced marmalade on the pumpkins. The brush made it really easy to apply, and if I wanted a deeper colour, I kept going over the same area and adding more ink. I wanted to see if I could remove the acrylic paint that was on the ones I didn't like, and a baby wipe, thank goodness, did remove it. I was able to take off all the paint and get it back to its original white. It felt a little sticky and slimy, so I decided to let it dry again before I tried to use the inks. Meanwhile, I went through and removed all the acrylic paint off the other ones that I had painted. After letting them dry for a while, I could paint them again with the inks, and they looked so much better. I used the festive berries and the crushed olive for the apples, and I used tea dye and festive berries for the mushrooms, or toadstools I think they would be. Once I'd finished colouring them, I put them back on the lights and hung them up just to dry off completely. All that's left to do now is to spray them with a varnish and they're ready to go. And here are some photos of them lit up. You can see that the lights shine through the foam really well and through the paint. It works better on the ones that I used the ink for rather than the acorns, which had the acrylic paint on, but they do still glow. I really love them. I'm going to keep them on my mantelpiece for the autumn season. And they look just as cute when the lights aren't on. I put some white dots on the toadstools. And I love the gold that you get on the acorns. It shimmers just in the light. Please give me a thumbs up if you like this and let me know what you think about it in the comments. And consider subscribing so you can come back again next week to see what else I'm doing. Thanks for watching. Bye.